The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured grounds of Kensington Palace as 23-year-old James Mitchell adjusted his red tunic for what felt like the 100th time. He had been serving as a royal guard for only 6 months, and the weight of his bearskin hat still felt unfamiliar on his young shoulders. Born in a small village in Yorkshire, James had never imagined he would one day stand guard at one of the most famous palaces in the world. The year was 1987, and Princess Diana had captured the hearts of people around the globe. Her grace, compassion, and genuine warmth had earned her the title, the People's Princess, though James had only caught glimpses of her from a distance during his duties. Royal guards were trained to remain invisible, to blend into the background while maintaining the highest level of alertness and discipline. On this particular Tuesday morning, James was positioned near the main entrance of the palace, his eyes scanning the grounds with practiced efficiency. The protocol was clear and unwavering. Guards were not to speak unless spoken to, not to move unless absolutely necessary, and certainly not to engage in conversation with members of the royal family. These rules had been drilled into him during months of rigorous training at Wellington Barracks. As the morning progressed, James noticed an unusual amount of activity around the palace. Staff members moved with purposeful urgency, and he could sense an air of anticipation that seemed different from the usual royal routine. He had learned to read these subtle signs during his short tenure, understanding that even the smallest changes in atmosphere could signal important events or visits. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves and the distant sounds of London traffic. James remained motionless, his rifle held at the precise angle required by regulations, his face maintaining the stoic expression that had become second nature to him. Yet beneath his professional exterior, he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of nervousness about something he couldn't quite identify. Little did James know that this ordinary Tuesday would become a day that would forever change his perspective on duty, compassion, and the true meaning of royal service. The events that were about to unfold would challenge everything he had been taught about maintaining professional distance and would reveal a side of royalty that no training manual could have prepared him for. As he stood there in the growing warmth of the morning sun, James had no idea that he was about to witness firsthand the extraordinary kindness and humanity that had made Princess Diana beloved by millions around the world. The next few hours would teach him lessons about leadership, empathy, and genuine care that would stay with him long after his service at the palace had ended. The sound of approaching footsteps on the gravel path caught his attention, and James instinctively straightened his already perfect posture, preparing for whatever the day might bring. The afternoon brought an unexpected change to James's routine when his commanding officer approached with news that would make any young guard's heart race. Princess Diana would be hosting a small gathering in the palace gardens for a children's charity, and additional security presence was required along the perimeter. James was assigned to a new position closer to where the event would take place. As he took his new post near the rose garden, James could hear the distant sound of children's laughter and see colorful decorations being arranged by the palace staff. The princess had a well-known dedication to children's causes, and this particular event was raising funds for a hospital that treated young patients with serious illnesses. The gravity of the cause wasn't lost on James, who had a younger sister back home in Yorkshire. From his position, James could observe the preparations taking place. Palace staff moved efficiently, setting up tables with refreshments, arranging chairs in small circles, and testing sound equipment for what appeared to be a small presentation. The attention to detail was remarkable, with every element carefully planned to create a warm, welcoming environment for the young guests who would soon arrive. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the first vehicles began arriving at the palace gates. James watched as families stepped out of cars and minivans, many of the children clearly excited despite the formal setting. Some walked with the assistance of medical equipment, others moved slowly but with determined smiles, and all seemed to carry an infectious energy that even the usually stoic palace staff couldn't help but notice. Then James saw her. Princess Diana emerged from the palace wearing a soft blue dress that seemed to capture the afternoon light perfectly. Even from his distant position, her presence was unmistakable. She moved with a grace that appeared effortless. Yet James could see the genuine warmth in her expression as she greeted the first families to arrive. What struck James most was how the princess immediately knelt down to speak with the children at their eye level. This wasn't a formal receiving line or a ceremonial greeting, it was authentic human connection. She listened intently to each child, laughed at their jokes, and seemed genuinely interested in their stories. Her body language conveyed complete attention and care, as if each child was the most important person in the world at that moment. As the afternoon progressed, James found himself moved by what he was witnessing. The princess didn't simply make an appearance and leave. She stayed, participated in activities, helped serve refreshments, and created an atmosphere where these children, many facing serious health challenges, could simply be kids enjoying a magical afternoon at a palace. The sound of more laughter drew his attention back to the garden, where he could see Princess Diana had joined in what appeared to be an impromptu game with several of the children. Her genuine joy and engagement were evident even from James's distant vantage point, and he began to understand why she had earned such admiration from people around the world. As the charity event continued into the late afternoon, James noticed something that would forever change his understanding of true leadership. A small boy, probably no older than 8, had become separated from his group and was standing alone near the edge of the garden. The child appeared overwhelmed by the grandeur of his surroundings and was clearly fighting back tears without hesitation. Princess Diana excused herself from the conversation she was having with other guests and walked directly toward the frightened child. James watched in amazement as she approached the boy with the same care and attention she would give to any dignitary or important visitor. She knelt beside him, gently placing her hand on his shoulder, and began speaking in soft, reassuring tones from his position. James couldn't hear the words being exchanged, but he could see the transformation taking place. The boy's tense shoulders began to relax, and soon a small smile appeared on his face. Princess Diana had somehow managed to turn a moment of fear and confusion into one of comfort and connection. She stayed with the child until his parents found them, never once appearing rushed or impatient. What happened next would stay with James for the rest of his life. As Princess Diana was helping the boy reunite with his family, she noticed James standing at his post. Their eyes met across the garden, and instead of the formal acknowledgement he might have expected, she offered him a warm, genuine smile. It was a moment of human recognition that transcended the usual barriers between royalty and staff. The event concluded successfully as the afternoon sun began to set, painting the palace gardens in golden hues. Families gathered their belongings, children hugged the princes goodbye, and the organized chaos of departure began. James remained at his post, but he found his usual stoic demeanor had been replaced by something softer, more thoughtful. As the last of the guests departed and the palace staff began cleaning up, James expected his duties for the day to wind down in the usual quiet manner. The gardens slowly returned to their normal peaceful state, with only the sound of distant traffic and the occasional bird call breaking the silence. But as he stood there reflecting on what he had witnessed, James heard footsteps approaching his position. He straightened instinctively, preparing to maintain his professional composure, but when he looked up, he was surprised to see Princess Diana walking directly toward him. She was alone. Having apparently dismissed her usual entourage of staff and security for this impromptu visit, the princess walked with purpose but without hurry, her expression thoughtful and kind. James felt his heart rate increase as she drew closer, unsure of the protocol for such an unexpected encounter. His training had covered many scenarios, but a solo visit from Princess Diana to a guard post had never been part of the curriculum. As she approached, James could see that despite the long afternoon of hosting and entertaining, the princess appeared energized rather than tired. There was something in her manner that suggested this wasn't a casual stroll through the gardens, but rather an intentional visit with a specific purpose in mind. Princess Diana stopped just a few feet away from James's position, close enough that he could see the genuine warmth in her eyes and the slight fatigue that the long afternoon had brought to her features. For a moment, neither spoke, and James felt the weight of protocol pressing down on him like his heavy bearskin hat. Everything in his training told him to remain silent, to maintain his position, and to wait for any commands or acknowledgement, but then Princess Diana did something completely unexpected. She stepped slightly closer and spoke in a voice that was both gentle and conversational, as if they were old friends meeting in a park rather than a member of the royal family addressing a palace guard. "You've been standing here for quite some time today," she said, her tone carrying genuine concern rather than formal observation. "I noticed you during the event and I wanted to thank you personally for your service." James felt his breath catch in his throat. This was so far beyond any scenario he had imagined that he struggled to find his voice. When he finally managed to speak, his words came out in the crisp, formal tone he had been trained to use. "Your Royal Highness, it is my honor to serve," he replied. His eyes fixed straight ahead as protocol demanded. Princess Diana smiled at his response, but there was something in her expression that suggested she understood the constraints he was operating under. She glanced around the quiet garden, then back at James with a look that seemed to say she wished things could be different, more natural. "I saw how attentively you watched over the children today," she continued, her voice taking on a more personal tone. "Even from your post, I could see that you cared about their safety and happiness. That means more than you might realize." The princess paused, and James could sense that she was choosing her next words carefully. The afternoon light was beginning to fade, casting long shadows across the garden and creating an atmosphere that felt both intimate and surreal. "You know," she said, her voice becoming even softer, "people often think that royal duties are all about ceremony and formality. But the truth is, the most important moments happen when we remember that beneath all the protocols and positions, we're all just human beings trying to do our best for each other." James felt something shift inside him as he listened to her words. This wasn't the distant, untouchable figure he had imagined royalty to be. This was someone who understood the weight of duty but also recognized the importance of human connection and genuine care. Princess Diana took another small step closer, and James could smell the faint scent of her perfume mixed with the garden's roses. Her next words would be ones that he would replay in his mind countless times in the years to come. "I want you to know that what you do here matters. Standing guard isn't just about protecting buildings or following orders. You're protecting moments like today, spaces where children can feel safe and happy, even if just for an afternoon." As Princess Diana continued speaking, James felt the formal barriers that had defined his role beginning to dissolve. Her words weren't just polite acknowledgments of his service, they reflected a deep understanding of the human cost of duty and the importance of recognizing those who serve behind the scenes. "I've been watching how the staff and guards interact with visitors today," she said, her gaze moving momentarily toward the palace before returning to James. "There's a difference between those who see their role as just a job and those who understand they're part of something, larger part of creating experiences that can touch people's lives." The princess reached into a small purse she was carrying and withdrew what appeared to be a handwritten note. James's eyes widened slightly, though he maintained his professional posture. Personal gifts or communications to guards were highly unusual and typically went through proper channels and protocols. "This is something I wrote during the event today," Princess Diana explained, holding the note but not yet offering it to him. "I was watching that little boy who became frightened earlier, and I noticed how your attention never wavered from the safety and well-being of everyone in the garden. Even from your post, you were part of making sure he felt secure." James felt a lump forming in his throat as he processed her words. Throughout his training, he had been taught to think of his role in terms of regulations, procedures, and maintaining proper distance. Never had anyone suggested that his presence could contribute to someone's emotional comfort or sense of security. "Your Royal Highness," James began, then stopped, unsure of how to express what he was feeling without breaking protocol. Princess Diana seemed to understand his struggle. "It's all right," she said gently. I know the rules don't make room for these kinds of conversations, but sometimes the most important things we need to say can't wait for the proper channels or formal occasions. She extended the note toward him, and after a moment of hesitation, James accepted it. The paper felt substantial in his hands, and he could see that it was written in blue ink with what appeared to be careful, thoughtful handwriting. I want you to read this later. When you're off duty, Princess Diana said. But I also want to tell you something now, because I may not have another opportunity to speak with you like this. The garden around them had grown quieter as the day staff completed their cleanup and departed. The golden light of late afternoon was giving way to the softer hues of early evening, and James could hear the distant sounds of London settling into its evening rhythm. Princess Diana took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a weight and sincerity that made every word feel significant. In all the training and protocol that shapes your service here, I hope someone has told you that your humanity matters just as much as your professionalism. The children who were here today didn't just feel safe because of your training. They felt safe because they could sense your genuine care. She paused, looking directly into his eyes with an intensity that was both comforting and challenging. That's not something that can be taught or drilled into someone. That comes from who you are as a person. Princess Diana stepped back slightly, but her expression remained warm and focused on James. The moment felt suspended in time, as if the usual rush and formality of palace life had paused to allow for this unexpected human connection. I need to share something with you, she said, her voice taking on a tone that was both personal and profound. Today, when I saw that frightened little boy, I thought about my own sons. I thought about how important it is for children to feel protected, not just by rules and procedures, but by people who genuinely care about their well-being. James felt the weight of her words settling over him like a warm cloak. The note in his hand seemed to grow heavier, containing whatever message she had felt compelled to write during the afternoon's events. The truth is, Princess Diana continued, I've been in situations where I felt scared and overwhelmed, just like that little boy did today. And in those moments, it wasn't the grand gestures or formal protocols that comforted me. It was knowing that someone, somewhere, was watching out for me with genuine concern. She glanced toward the palace, then back to James, and he could see something vulnerable and real in her expression that no photograph or public appearance had ever captured. What I saw in you today was someone who understands that real service isn't about being invisible. It's about being present in a way that makes others feel valued and protected. That little boy may never remember the specifics of this afternoon, but he'll remember feeling safe. And that's partly because of how you carried yourself while watching over everyone here. Princess Diana reached out and briefly touched James's arm, a gesture so unexpected and human that he had to fight to maintain his composure. I want you to promise me something, she said, her voice becoming almost whisper-soft. Promise me that you'll never let anyone convince you that caring is weakness or that doing your duty well means shutting off your heart. The words hit James with unexpected force. Throughout his training, he had been taught to suppress emotion, to maintain professional distance, and to never let personal feelings interfere with his responsibilities. Yet here was Princess Diana, someone who had mastered the art of public duty, telling him that his humanity was not just acceptable, but essential. Your Royal Highness, James finally managed to say, his voice thick with emotion he was struggling to control. I don't know how to thank you for what you said today. Princess Diana smiled, and for a moment the formal titles and protocols seemed to disappear entirely. You don't need to thank me, she replied. Just remember it. Remember that who you are matters just as much as what you do. Remember that kindness and strength can coexist. And remember that sometimes the most important service we provide is simply letting others know they matter. As she prepared to leave, Princess Diana delivered her final words to James, words that would echo in his mind for decades to come and fundamentally change how he approached not just his service at the palace, but every relationship and responsibility in his life. Never forget, she said, her voice carrying absolute conviction, That true nobility isn't about titles or positions. It's about how we treat others when no one is watching, and how we choose to use whatever power we have to make others feel valued and protected. You have that nobility, and I hope you'll carry it with you always. With those words, Princess Diana offered him one final smile, turned gracefully and walked back toward the palace, leaving James standing in the gathering dusk with a note in his hand and a completely transformed understanding of what it truly meant to serve others with both duty and heart.